Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to make graphs using a graphing calculator, another very, very cool thing that can save you a lot of times. So we're going to work with this little problem in red. You bring $80 to camp, you spend $10 each day. Okay, we're going to try to figure out putting that equation into your calculator. Well, first we got to know the equation. So I think you probably noticed that y equals, you could do 80 minus 10x if we call y the amount of money you have left and x the number of days that have passed. Or you might put y equals negative 10x plus 80. Either of those are totally fine. So when we go to our graphing calculator, you're going to recall from when we did the tables that you have to hit the y equals button here. And if there's other equations in there, you can clear that button. And we're going to put 80 minus 10x. And we really need to make sure we use this xt theta n button, 80 minus 10x. Okay, and then we need to try to look at the graph. A lot of times you might just notice, hey, there's a graph button, let's check it out. And it shows you the graph, but this time it's not very useful. I mean, I see a little bit here, but I'm not sure that's going to tell me enough about what I want to know. So this is always the most challenging thing for students, it seems to be setting up the window. So I'm going to work with you on that. So when you set up the window, you need to figure out what's going to make sense here. So x min means the smallest x value. In this scenario, you have to think about, okay, x means your number of days. What's the smallest number of days that you're going to spend money? In this case, it's probably going to be 0. So I'm going to keep that in mind just for this scenario. It's not always going to be 0. X max, well, that's the biggest x value, the maximum x value. Okay, so in this case, okay, what do you want the biggest x value to be? How many days might you spend at camp? Well, probably not more than 10 days. I'd be surprised. Maybe you'd go more. X scale. What do you want your x to count by? So just try to make that reasonable. This is not as important because graphing calculator, as long as it has the min and max, you'll get a good picture. But if I'm going from 0 to 10, I think I'd probably count by ones in this case. Okay, the y, in this case, it's your dependent variable, and in the scenario I gave you, it's money. So your y minimum, what's the smallest amount of money you'll have? Well, so it's the smallest y. Well, hopefully you're not going to go below 0. You hopefully won't go into debt. Okay. Y max, the biggest y value. Notice here that it says you bring $80 to camp, so you need to go up to at least 80. I'm going to go to 100 just because I usually like to go a little over the max. Y scale, what y counts by. So if I go from 0 to 100, I might count by tens. Okay, so let's set up our entire window. So how we're going to do that when we want to set up the window, it's like going to the table, except you don't have to hit the second button. You just go right here and press window. So we're going to go ahead and do that, set up with the values I just recommended. So again, if you don't have your graphing calculator, you need to pause the video and go get it because it really only works if you're doing this along with me. Okay, so in my window, I'm hitting window, and we said that the x min was 0. And then you can arrow down to the y. The x max, we want it to be 10, which is already there. And the x scale, we said count by 1. So great. The y min, we suggested 0. The y max suggested 100. And the y scale, we're going to count by tens. You do not need to pay attention to x res, delta x, change in x, or trace step at this time. Just ignore those. And then to view the graph, like I showed you before, you're just going to hit graph. And I think this time it gives us a little bit better picture of what's actually going on here. And then here's some really helpful buttons that you might need to know. If you hit trace, and then you can see like there's a point here, 5:30, x equals 5, y equals 30. It tells you when you've been there for 5 days, you have $30 left. And if you move left and right, it gives you some other values, which might not make as much sense because depending on what they're counting by, but you can get some good estimates. like here you can see it's about 4 and about 39.8. If you want to find an exact value, I love this button. You might like to try it too. You go to second, trace, and there's a little button that says calc up there, calculate. The first one says value. If you want to calculate a value, you can say, well, I really wonder how much I'm going to have after 2 weeks. So then you can just put 2 in there, or 2 days, enter, and it shows you when x is 2, y is 60. So after 2 days, you'll have $60 left. So that's really useful. So if you remember to use trace when you just want to move like left and right and just get a good approximation for points on there, or calculate if you know your exact x value and you want to figure out the y, like after 8 days, oh no, I'm out of money then. Those are two really useful buttons to help you